In the early hours of the 5th of October 1930, British Airship 101 crashed into a hillside in France, killing almost everybody on board. Airships have been seen over the skies of Britain during the First World War, when they were used by the Germans to drop bombs on British towns and cities. And after the war, the Germans continued to develop them for commercial purposes. So with an eye to the possibilities presented by this new format of transport, and also for British prestige, they don't want to be second to the Germans after all, who just lost the First World War, the government set up the Imperial Airship Scheme. 2 airships were built, both funded by the taxpayer, but whilst the first one, called the R100, was built by a private subsidiary of the Vickers Armaments Company, the second, the R101, was built entirely by the Air Ministry itself. No great surprise to find the private sector airship was first off the mark. The R100 completed a return trip across the Atlantic to Canada. And meanwhile, the German flagship, the craft Zeppelin, completed a round-the-world voyage. So the R101 was always meant to be an experimental model, but the Air Minister, Lord Thomson, wanted to see basically some bang for his buck. Thomson was desperate for the R101 not to be left behind in the wake of these PR coups by the other airships, and he urged a flight to the jewel in the British Empire, India. And so on the 4th of October 1930, the R101 set off with Thomson as their guest of honour towards India. The R101 was overloaded, it hadn't been properly trialled, and despite concerns of officers and meteorologists, they hadn't waited for detailed weather forecasts. In fact, the last trial had been held 3 days earlier, and where despite only completing 17 hours of the 24-hour trial, not testing the airship on full speed and not running all the engines simultaneously, and also conducted the trial in absolutely calm conditions, the airship was deemed ready for its maiden flight. And at 6:24 p.m. on the 4th of October, the R101 cast off from her moorings at Cardington, just outside Bedford. Through the doors of the massive shed built to house her and her sister ship, the R100 looked on. And you can still see those 2 sheds to this day. They are huge, just outside Bedford at Cardington. The R101 was 140 feet high and 777 feet in length. To put that into context, that is longer than 3 Boeing 747s end to end put together. And in the darkness, with the light rain, the R101 passed over Bedford, saluting her hometown before turning south towards London. Leaving London behind, she passed over Hastings on the south coast at 9:35 p.m. And 2 hours later, she had crossed the English Channel. They sent a wireless message back to Cardington, stated they were now travelling through pretty heavy rain and there was a strong southwest wind, but Captain Irwin reported that the airship was running well. Lord Thomson, Minister of Air, enjoyed a cigar before turning in for bed. And sometime between 1 and 2 a.m, Captain Irwin popped his head round the door of the rest room, where the chief engineer and a fellow engineer, Harry Leach, a World War I veteran, were having a smoke. And after a relaxed conversation, the captain went on his way and the 2 engineers inspected the engines, and all was well. At 1:52 a.m. on the 5th of October, the wireless operator back in Bedfordshire received an acknowledgement of a previous communication from the R101 as it continued its journey across northern France towards Paris. It was the last communication from the airship. Suddenly, 8 minutes later, the R101 went into a steep nosedive. Experts now believe that there was a catastrophic loss of gas from the front of the airship, which had sent it into that nosedive. The descent was arrested, but the airship was now just 500 feet above the ground. Captain Irwin ordered the engines to be stopped, and the chief coxswain, a man called Hunt, said matter-of-factly to the crew, "We're going down, lads." A second nosedive, possibly caused by a cross-current in the wind near a hill, took the airship straight into the hillside. Now, the crash of the 101 was not like a disaster movie. Yet later crash analysis showed that the airship had actually cut a groove of just 2 foot in the soil. It had come in that gently, suggesting a real gentle landing. And in fact, a crewman who survived, a man by the name of Disley, actually said that he was not unbalanced. He was standing up when they crashed, and he wasn't unbalanced by the landing. It was that gentle. What happened next is not entirely clear. but the hydrogen gas in the great cigar-shaped balloon ignited, and only 8 crewmen survived the ensuing fireball. 46 crew and passengers, including the Air Minister, Lord Thompson, were killed, and 2 of the survivors died shortly afterwards, leaving just 6 men to survive the crash of the R101. The loss of life was actually greater than that of the far more famous Hindenburg disaster in New Jersey in 1937, which was filmed on camera and was sort of photographed all around the world. But the R101 actually, unfortunately, had a worse death rate. The bodies of the victims were brought back to London, where they were taken to Westminster Hall to lie in state. Over 90,000 mourners paid their respects, and at one stage the queue measured over half a mile. Following a memorial service at St Paul's Cathedral on the 11th of October, all the bodies were taken by train from London to Bedford, and then on to the parish church in the small village next to at Cardington, next to their airship base. And there they were all buried in a communal grave, which you can still see to this day. The last surviving crew member, Arthur Cook, passed away in 1998, aged 91. The crash of the R101 was the death knell for Britain's airship adventure. Her sister ship, the R100, was scrapped soon afterwards. And all that remains, apart from the monument in the local churchyard, are those vast hangars at Cardington, silently looking on at what might have been. I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, please give me a like down below. It's nice to get a little pat on the head. Why don't you subscribe to my YouTube channel as well to hear more stories from British history? Or even better, sign up at thehistorychap.com to get these stories emailed directly to you. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you very soon.